120 over something. So the top number is the systolic blood pressure. It's the blood pressure when your heart contracts. And then the bottom number, the diastolic blood pressure, is the pressure that when the heart relaxes. So normal is less than 120 over 80. All right, 120 over 80 is the normal. So about a year ago, the American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology revised the criteria for hypertension. And so this just kind of summarizes that. So less normal, less than 120 over 80. If you're systolic, the top number is between 120 over 120 to 129, and the diastolic less than 80 is elevated blood pressure. And then stage 1 hypertension is systolic greater than 130. Stage 2 is systolic greater than 140. So how prevalent is hypertension? 46% of American adults are hypertensive. And if you break that down into African Americans, as you can see, African American men about 60% are hypertensive, and women about 56%. This is data from large epidemiologic studies. So it's very common, and when they call it the silent killer, because a lot of us are walking around with high blood pressure and not know it, so you have to be screened for it. What are some of the risk factors? Obesity, smoking, physical inactivity, high sodium diet, high salt diet, excessive alcohol consumption, low potassium, and the list goes on. Family history, of course, you can change that. Your genetics, you can't change. And also, there tends to be a higher prevalence in male compared to women. So why do we bother? Hypertension is bad, uncontrolled, it can be dangerous, it can lead to vision loss, stroke, heart failure, and of course kidney disease. How do we treat blood pressure? Lifestyle modification, I think that's oftentimes emphasized, but physical activity, diet, very important, very important. The treatment is not, the first line of management is not medication, it's lifestyle modification, okay? There's a nutritional plan, the DASH diet. You can Google DASH diet. It's a diet that's high in fiber, high in fruits and vegetables, that has been shown to actually reduce blood pressure. So it's a very effective way to help. It's a tool in the shed, so to speak, in helping manage hypertension. And of course, diets that tend to be high in potassium, lower blood pressure, and of course, medication. We're not going to spend a lot of time. I think the next speaker is going to talk about diabetes, but it's a disease that we see when the body doesn't produce as much insulin or doesn't recognize the insulin that's available. I'm going to breeze through. There are two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 diabetes, the body does not produce insulin. In type 2 diabetes, which is the vast majority of what I see in my practice, these are patients who the body produces insulin, but it doesn't recognize it. So there's insulin resistance, and this tends to be associated with the metabolic syndrome, obesity, and so forth. Okay. So how common is diabetes? About 30+ million Americans have diabetes. It's a very expensive disease, as you can see. $327 billion total cost in 2017 in terms of managing patients with diabetes and its complications. So it's a big deal. Risk factors: obesity, family history, gender, and again, can't get away from race. African Americans, Hispanic, Native Americans, so the same, you can see a pattern here, right? So these are some of the risk factors. How is it diagnosed? I'll skip over that. Fasting blood glucose, check an A1C, and these are the values, the ranges there. How is it treated? Type 1 diabetes, the body doesn't produce insulin. You need insulin. These are folks who, they need insulin. They tend to be younger, right? They need insulin. But with type 2, weight loss is very important. If you can, it helps reverse the insulin resistance, and it's very, very important. And the goal, obviously, is to get your hemoglobin A1C down to less than 7%. So this is my last slide. Some take-home points here. If you're hypertensive, You have to get your blood pressure checked. We have to treat your blood pressure to a goal of less than 130/80. If you're diabetic, we need to get your A1C to less than 7%. If you're smoking, today should be your last day. You need to stop smoking. All right? It's bad for you for so many reasons. And I can't find any study that says smoking is good for anything. Stop it. Exercise, whether it's walking, swimming, tennis, find something that you enjoy doing and stick with it. Exercise is very important. It helps with your blood pressure, it helps with the weight, and helps with their diabetes too. Try to eat a low-salt diet, cut back on fast food, and a heart-healthy diet. Take your medicines. It's very important. We see a lot of patients with hypertension, and they don't take the medicines. They'll come to your office, you'll write them a script, they'll buy the medication, and it stays on the kitchen counter. So if you get the medicine, you can get it, take it. And one of my biases, as a nephrologist, I see patients, I think way too many patients take Motrin and leave. Just cut back on that. All right. And I think this is, let me see. I think, yeah, I think this was, so I usually end this talk, so a lot of times folks will ask me, so where's the accent from? So I tell them, I'm from this tiny country there. I want one of the young folks to tell me I'm from Sierra Leone. Can someone tell me where that is? There's a laser pointer there. Maybe you can get an extra point. No. Well, anyway, it's a little tiny country on the west coast. It sits right below Guinea, between Guinea and Liberia. It's on the coast, and that's where I'm from. I was born. All right. That's it. That's it. All right.
For about a month now, every time I try to walk, I'm out of breath. I can't even climb the stairs. I used to be able to run up the stairs, and now as soon as I get to the fourth stair, I'm just so winded I can't breathe. Oh my gosh, I'm exhausted.
You need to see the doctor. I think you might be having some angina or
No, I
heart
don't think so. I'm a
problems.
healthy person. Don't tell me that. No.
You feel winded, with chest pain.
It's probably just indigestion. I had some orange juice. I had some. Don't you think it's indigestion?
Just to be on the safe side, it's better to be safe than sorry. You need to see the doctor and let him decide.
Okay, but when I'm sitting down, I'm fine. There's no pain or anything.
It might be unstable angina. So,
oh gosh, I hope that's not what it is.
You need to see the doctor.
Well, thank you.
I want you to see the doctor before it gets worse, and I don't want anything to happen to you. Heart disease is currently the leading cause of death globally, and it encompasses a number of heart diseases. And the video deals with coronary artery disease, which causes heart attack. The coronary arteries supply the heart with blood, and when these arteries become obstructed by high levels of cholesterol, then we have a heart attack. They eventually rupture because the lumen of the vessels that supply the heart, go around the heart, become occluded, and they rupture, and we have a heart attack. And death ensues a lot of the time. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was saying that the coronary arteries, which you're going to see portrayed in this video, supplies the heart with blood. And when these arteries become occluded because of high levels of cholesterol, and they get smaller and smaller and they rupture, then we have a heart attack. The muscle of the heart, the heart is just a muscle sitting in your chest. And when the heart muscle does not receive oxygen, then the muscle dies, and hence death.
The goal today, an artery that supplies the majority of the heart muscle, and there's one that's called the left circumflex artery that goes to the side of the heart, and I have a second picture to show you that. This is the left circumflex artery here. It kind of wraps around. So we have three main arteries and smaller branches. Now, those are coronary arteries. And what is atherosclerosis? Atherosclerosis is what leads to coronary artery disease. And I want to talk a little bit about what atherosclerosis actually is and how does it start. And so what it starts in the coronary arteries, you have fat and cholesterol that deposits in the wall of the arteries, and that leads to plaque formation. And over time, you have a little bit of calcium that deposits in there as well, and you have hardening of the arteries, plaque formation in the coronary arteries. That is atherosclerosis, and atherosclerosis leads to coronary artery disease. So that's how the process starts. Now, it doesn't start overnight, okay? It takes years to decades for it to form, okay? So, people who have coronary artery disease have it for a long time. It's just that it takes a long time, and then all of a sudden it starts acting up when it hits a critical threshold, or if you have a plaque rupture, you can have a heart attack. And I'm going to go through the differences in coronary artery disease that's progressive versus heart attacks. How do you differentiate the two? I think it's important. The other thing that's important to know is atherosclerosis starts as little fatty streaks. So cholesterol deposits into the arteries, and then it starts as little fatty streaks. And what we don't realize is that it starts very early. So people in their adolescence years, teenage years, you start having fatty streaks. They have done studies where autopsy studies of people who are in motor vehicle accidents, and they take a look at their aorta, and we are all surprised that people who are late teenage years, early 20s already have these fatty streaks in their arteries. So I think it's very important to, and now not everyone has them. It depends on your risk factors, your lifestyle, things of that sort, diet, but it starts very early in the process. So I think you really have to start working or acting on it early on to prevent it from becoming much worse of a problem down the road. So now, these are a couple of pictures to show you what atherosclerosis is. Forget the writing because it's too small to project, but this is a normal coronary artery, and you can see the lumen is nice and large and is smooth. The surface is smooth and it's widely patent. What can happen is over time, all this yellow stuff that you see is plaque. You have cholesterol and you have fat deposits into the wall of the artery, and you have all of these plaque buildup. So you can see the lumen, or the opening, has gone from this to this, and the opening now is much smaller. And that's what's progressive atherosclerosis is. That's what plaque formation is. And then what you'll notice is that, well, what's the difference between this artery here and this one? Well, there's a big clot, which is red, in the middle of the artery. So something happened where this person had a lot of disease, but still had an opening that supplied the blood flow, but something happened that led from this to this, and now all of a sudden complete blood flow is blocked to that part of the heart muscle, hence you have a heart attack. And I'm going to go through exactly how that happens. This is another slide which is a little too small, but what it shows here is that this is where the arteries open. Then you have this yellow stuff forming on the bottom, which is the plaque formation. And then when the plaque ruptures, which is that little volcano type of picture here, that leads to a complete occlusion. And people who have a tendency for these plaques to rupture, unfortunately, the body has some inflammation that makes them susceptible for those plaques to rupture again and again. So if you have a heart attack, you're at much higher risk of having another heart attack, just because there's something about the body that the plaques rupture and you're at a higher risk. Now this is a little bit of a zoom up of how this happens. So in the wall of the artery, so this is the artery and you're cutting it in half, okay? And you're looking at the wall of the artery. Within the wall, you have plaque formation. So all the yellow stuff you see there is fat, macrophage cells, cholesterol deposits, and that's where plaque starts. And for the most part, it's not an issue. Normally, those type of plaques only become an issue when the blockage is 70% or greater. If you have a 40, 50, 60% blockage, the body adapts very well, and it can still provide enough blood flow, and you may not even have any symptoms and may not realize it. But those plaques, once that smooth surface over that, if that ruptures for some reason, and why does it rupture? Well, inflammation. If these plaques have a lot of inflammation in there, that smooth surface over it may rupture. Now all of a sudden, all of this nasty looking stuff is exposed to the bloodstream. Before it was hiding under a nice covered smooth layer, now it's exposed to blood cells, platelets, and all of a sudden everything starts sticking to it because it's not smooth anymore. It's a rough surface, everything starts sticking to it, and voila, you go within a matter of seconds to minutes to 100% occlusion. So you may go from a 20, 30% blockage to 100% blockage in the matter of seconds, and those are the massive heart attacks that you hear of in the middle of the night or early morning hours, and those can happen. And you may come to see me and be perfectly fine. And I say, okay, your stress test looks okay, you're fine. And the next morning you may have a heart attack because those plaques, and unfortunately we just haven't become that good to really identify plaques that are vulnerable to rupturing. And there are things that I'll talk about later that we can try to do to prevent some of that. But that's how those processes occur. So now let's talk about what are the risk factors for coronary artery disease.
The risk factors were identified before, and they're much the same that was described by our previous speaker. And lots of times people get rushed to the cardiac cath lab where stents may be put in to open up the coronary arteries, or they might have to be rushed to the operating room where you have to have coronary artery bypass. And that's another deal. The arteries are taken, saphenous vein grafts are taken from the legs to replace the blocked arteries, and that's how, you might have some quality to life after that. Thank you.
I feel weak. I can't see very well. I'm going constantly to the restroom. I'm eating junk food constantly, and I just feel like I just don't feel well. I can't see very well, and I don't know what's going on.
How long have you had these symptoms?
For a while. They come and they go. I notice when I start eating sweets, I feel better. But then after that, it's like it starts all over again. I can't see. I see double when I'm driving, and it scares me. I don't want to drive. I don't know why this is happening to me.
Have you noticed anything in your feet?
I feel weak, like I can't walk. I wobble a lot, and I don't know what's causing this.
Okay. So I'll have you book an appointment with me, and we'll talk about these symptoms. We'll need to do some tests,
Okay.
and then we'll get to the bottom of it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Paula Jacob Fox, and I'll be talking this evening about diabetes. Diabetes is a disease that's well known to many of us, and what I'll do is just highlight a few points about it. I'm more interested in your questions later on that we'll try to answer. So diabetes is a problem with the regulation of blood sugar in the body. As many of us know, when you eat, much of your food is converted into a sugar called glucose. You have an organ that's close to your stomach. It's called your pancreas. The pancreas has one section of it, they're called beta cells, and they produce insulin. Now, insulin's job is to regulate the body's blood sugar. It causes our liver to store blood sugar so we can have some blood sugar stored up for when we're not eating. For example, at night when you're sleeping for 8 hours or more, there's a process where the liver is actually pumping glucose out into your bloodstream. Your skeletal muscles use that glucose, and this is why exercise is so important. So the more we exercise, the more we use up that blood glucose, the insulin talks to the skeletal muscle receptors, and they use up the blood glucose, and so the blood sugar in the bloodstream goes down. The problem with diabetes is that process is all messed up. Now, as our nephrologist mentioned earlier, there are different types of diabetes. So we have diabetes type 1, which accounts for about maybe 5% of the cases. This is where your body does not produce any insulin, little or no insulin. So that is diagnosed usually in very young people. We used to call it juvenile diabetes, meaning you can have it from the time you're 5, 6 years old. Has nothing to do with obesity, has nothing to do with lifestyle necessarily. This is purely a problem where your body is not producing insulin. Diabetes type 2, you are producing insulin. Now this one accounts for 95% or more of the cases. This one is lifestyle related, and this is the one I'm going to spend most of the time talking about. Because what we want to focus on this evening is not just giving you this information, which much of you already know, but how can you prevent it? Because diabetes, as mentioned earlier, is one of the risk factors for kidney disease, for heart disease. So if we can manage this or prevent this in the first place, then you don't have to worry about kidney problems or heart problems later on. So type 2 is where I'm going to spend most of the time. Gestational diabetes, that's just a form of high blood sugar that occurs in pregnant women. And by the way, if you've ever been pregnant and you've had gestational diabetes, it increases your risk for type 2 diabetes later on. We also have prediabetes, which is not listed here. So prediabetes is simply where your blood sugar is not at the level yet where we can call it diabetes, but it's not at the level of normal either. So it's kind of in between normal and full-blown diabetes. What are some of the symptoms? So as our sister was displaying here, you can have blurry vision. You can have headaches. You can have frequent urination. All of a sudden you're going to the bathroom, getting up several times at night and you don't know why. Numbness in the feet. Now this usually occurs later on when the diabetes has affected the vessels in the feet and therefore affecting the nerves in the feet. And then pain in the feet for the same reasons. Those are the main symptoms. There may be others. Prevention. This is where we want to spend most of our time. If you can prevent diabetes from progressing, you will not need medication. You will not need insulin later on. So this is where you want to spend most of your energies. Plant-based diet. We spoke about that this morning. How we eat has much to do with whether or not we develop type 2 diabetes in the first place. So making sure we cut out not just sugar. A lot of people think it's sugar. It's also carbs, starches, because much of these foods are converted into glucose in the body. So rice, potatoes, pasta, bread, these are all converted into sugar in the body. So we do want to limit the amount of these starches in our diet. Much more vegetables, water, beans, legumes, things of that nature, and of course in the right portions. Exercise. As mentioned earlier today, exercise prevents everything. Kidney disease, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, exercise prevents all of that. So if you take nothing else away today, and if you do not already have an exercise routine, this is where you want to start one. How much exercise should you be doing? At a very minimum, we recommend about 150 minutes per week. So that can be divided into about 30 minutes, 5 days a week, 50 minutes, 3 days a week, minimum. If you want to do more, you sure can. Some people ask me, well, my job is very physical. I'm always walking. I'm always lifting things up. And they want to count that as exercise. Now, that's activity, and that's good. But there are benefits to exercise that you do not get from your day-to-day activity. When you exercise, what we want you to do is get your heart rate up to what's called your VO2 max, so your maximum heart rate. So that's usually about 220 minus your age. 220 minus your age. And you want to get your heart rate up, so you're doing something to bring your heart rate up, and you want to keep it up there for about 20 to 30 minutes. That's when you experience much of the benefits of cardiovascular exercise. So bear that in mind. Yes, activity is good, but exercise itself, that kind of exercise is very beneficial. Drink more water. In general, you want to limit sugary drinks. So a lot of people don't know, for example, that I have patients who come to me a lot and say, well, I drink a lot of soda. I'm a soda person. They drink a lot of soda, and they don't realize it's going to lead to diabetes. Or they drink Gatorade. How many of you know that Gatorade is high in sugar? Loaded. So Gatorade is loaded with sugar. You should not be drinking it. There are even some fruit, natural things that are high in sugar. So your watermelons, your grapes. It's not that you shouldn't have them, but you want to limit the amount that you're eating in one session. Maintain a healthy weight. Basically, with weight management, you want to know what your body mass index is. So you want to know what your height and weight are, and then you can calculate your body mass index. In general, a healthy body mass index is anything between 18 and 24.9. 18 and 24.9. So if your body mass index is somewhere between 25 and 29, you're considered overweight. If your BMI is above 30, you're considered obese. If you're above 40 or 50, you're severely obese. And the higher you are, the higher your risk for developing many of these conditions. So your aim should be to stay to as close to a normal BMI as possible. What are some of the complications of diabetes? Certainly heart disease, as mentioned earlier, vision loss, kidney failure, amputation of the legs, poor circulation in the legs, etc. So these are the 4 main complications. Treatment, so we talked about prevention earlier. Now, treatment also includes lifestyle changes. So it's not because you're diagnosed with diabetes you have to be on medication. I have had patients lower and control their diabetes just by diet and exercise alone. So it is possible to manage your blood sugars naturally, but you have to really do it. If you're not doing it, then your blood sugar is going to be high, and then you're going to need the medication, because now you're trying to prevent the kidney disease and the heart disease that we talked about earlier. So it's not okay to say, oh, I'm into the natural thing, and then you're not really doing it. If you're into it, you got to do it. And that's it. Thank you.
Sister, can I ask you something?
Yes.
I realized that I have a little lump. Well, more than one, like 2 lumps in my breast.
Yes.
And I noticed it like about 6 months ago, but I'm really scared to go to the doctor. I don't even want them to tell me anything. My mother died of cancer. My sister died of cancer. My aunt died of breast cancer. I just don't even want to hear anything, so I don't know what to do. You think you could pray for me?
Yes, I can pray for you, but it's best for you to go to the doctor, to diagnose you, because the longer you stay, maybe the worse it gets. And sometimes I know prayers help, but it's good to be certain what is really going on in your breast. So I would introduce you to go out and see a doctor. And there is one right here, Dr. Megan, so you can really speak with her.
Good evening, Conyers. It's so nice to be back home. It's been a while. I see the kids have grown up. Everyone's taller, thinner. You all are looking beautiful. Love it. It's been too long. Okay, so I am going to set my timer, as you know I'm, obligated to do because I'm loquacious. So I think everyone else, you all took, 15 minutes or so? All right. Here we go. Will you pass that to me? All right. So we are going to talk about cancer, development, prevention, and also how to heal your body from cancer naturally. Alrighty, so there's what we're talking about today. Okay, development. Here we go. But first, I just want to give you an overview of what your body is, because that way it's easier for you to understand, when we start talking cells and this and that, what it is. So think of your body as being like a country. Put your own name in there. So I'd be like the United States of Megan. I've got my north, south, east, west. The way that we're, you can imagine each one of your organs to be like a city. So heart city, lung city, pancreas city, etc. Right? All right, think of it like that. There's a nice picture. Each organ is a city. All right. How do we move all the things around through blood vessels? Well, you can think of them as being like the interstate or like the highway. And so this is how you're getting all your supplies from Heart City that need to go down to Foote County. That's how it's going, through the highways, right? All right, so we're going there. And this is what it looks like, though. Which one of these things does the little red light again? Oh, it's not working? Oh, it's not gonna. Oh, yeah, it's working very nicely on your hand there. Oh, right. Yeah, it's too far. Okay. No problem. Oh, look. Now it's already. Hey, I'm the human. You move on my command. Okay. Sorry. Let's see how it's doing that. Okay. So there you go, though. Blood vessels there. You can see them there. And if you see there going everything that's red, so that's your. Aha. Awesome. Thank you. I saw a green light flash. Thank you, my brother. Look at that. Did you just have that handy in your pocket? Wow. He's just so prepared. Thank you. Okay. Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll just use this for my pointer light. So see here, up here, this would be Heart City right here on the top left side. And everything that you see in red, those are your arteries. Think A, arteries away from the heart. So it's driving down on the highway to go down all the different organs. And then everything that's blue might be too far to see. But those are veins, and they're going to come back up to the heart, right? Okay, and you can think of your red blood cells. Those are these here as being like semi-trucks. So again, in our country, that's usually how we move things around. I mean, yeah, we can fly things around too, but. All right, so there's that. And then platelets, you can think of them as the road repair crew. So when your blood vessels do get broken up by things that we've already discussed, like having too much cholesterol in there, you can think of that as having too much traffic, and then it breaks up the blood vessels. And so then you've got some platelets. Well, I should say with that breaking, then eventually you'll start getting cracks in the road, and then that'll make it easier for you to bleed, and then that's when the platelets come in, try to fix that and stop the bleeding. So there's that. Again, in the United States of you've got the immune system, so that's your defense. So think of that as your Army, Navy, Air Force, and then even the local police down here. All of that is the defense. I just love this green thing. All right. Now moving along. Again, these are just the basis so that you can understand when we're talking about these different cells or just in fact how small or how big cancer cells are. You'd have the scope of it. So then, again, a cell in the body is the smallest unit. So what does that mean? So if you were to think of the entire United States, a cell would be like one house in this entire country, right? That's really, really small, like if we were considering the whole country in one house. All right? So cancer now, how does it develop? Well, cancer cells have a life cycle. Basically, all of your organs or parts in your body, you can think of them as being made up of cells. So the more cells they are, bunch of houses make up a neighborhood, a bunch of neighborhoods make up a city, and then etc. So eventually, let's just say you have cancer in an organ, and that'd be a whole bunch of neighborhoods in that city, like Atlanta. So each cell, though, has a life cycle, meaning just like you do. You're born, baby, and then you get to be or before teenager, you get to be like this little dude here. Sorry, I shouldn't have touched you without asking. Sorry. And then, so then you get to be him and his size, and then teenage, and middle age, and then you die, right? That's the normal life cycle. Well, all of your cells in your body also do that, and that's dictated by your genes, right? Genetics. Okay, so then what happens in cancer development is then, for whatever reason, there's many reasons. Sometimes it can be environmental, toxins, exposures. It's usually a collaboration of things or an accumulation. Birth, death, mental, emotional things, poor lifestyle choices and diet and nutrition and sleep, and that job that is just stressing you out, that marriage that is horrible. Yeah, so all of those things accumulate, and then the body is trying to heal itself. It's trying to bounce back, but then it can't. So the genes, like I say, are what should determine. They're the ones that we have some tumor suppressor genes, and there's some other ones that would say, okay, I can see that this cell, let's just call him Sally Cell, all right, was supposed to, she was supposed to turn off and die when she got to elderly age, right? She's like 85 or whatever, this cell. So then, but then if there's a defect in that system, there's two systems. The first one is genes, and she doesn't die, and Sally Cell says instead, I will live forever, you know, and on top of that, I'm going to have babies who are also going to live forever and everyone is going to just live forever, me and my babies. Okay, so then it starts what we call replicating, okay? All right, but that's one system that you have. Here we go, I should have moved on. So system one, genes, okay? Cell is really supposed to commit suicide, right? That's really what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to kill itself. So we call that apoptosis. But if it doesn't, because remember, she's changed because of all these different environmental and maybe genetic factors, etc. She's like, I'm going to live forever. So she doesn't. That's failure one. Well, that's fine because God gave us a backup. Now, remembering, as she's doing all this, she's very, very small. At this point, it doesn't show up in imaging yet. You know, again, your average cancer can be developing as much as 10 or 20 years in the past. You know, it's kind of a few that can develop rapidly, but for the most part, that's the average. So it's kind of like a rabbit, let's say, hiding somewhere in your yard, or again, like one house in the entire, you're not going to see it, and neither will the imaging or even markers that we can do in the lab. All right, and then I just kind of usually throw in this about genetics. People do blame a lot of things on genetics, like cancer runs in my family, diabetes runs in my family, heart disease. I find really that most of the time it's really just the lifestyle and the customs that you pick up from your parents. For example, if it is nutrition or sleep or yelling at each other as loudly as you can for 3 hours straight, you know, which is elevating your stress hormone, cortisol and all this. I find that that's more like it. So I usually just throw in this slide here to say, think of something that we call epigenetics, you know, so that yes, there's a genetic component, but you shouldn't walk around thinking that I have no control over anything that happens to me, you know. So again, the analogy I usually use is it's a gun. You know, genetics is the gun that might be loaded here, ready, but the other triggers like environment, again, where you grew up as a child, if you grew up in the Ukraine, and you were during the 80s with the Chernobyl thing, well, obviously then comes in the environment, all that toxic fumes that, you know, sort of just decimated that whole area. That can lead to cancer, you know what I mean? It's things you can't control like genetics, and then there's also lifestyle things that you can control. So that should give you hope, because then you should know that, well, I'm just not destined to have high blood pressure or cancer or whatever. You have control. So, plus God is a healer, is he not? Yes. Yes. Awesome. That was weak, but I'm going to presume it's because you guys are tired and it's late in the evening. All right, so then remembering with cancer, it's sneaky, right? That's the rabbit in the yard. So you don't have to have any abnormal lab work if you are even going to get regular lab work, because I know how people, generally speaking, hate doctors. So, but you don't have to have it abnormal, and you don't have to even have any symptoms, because again, what's happening? It's just like a rabbit, how they replicate and replicate and replicate and replicate. And then finally, when there's 10,000 rabbits in front of you, then you're like, oh, I think I have a rabbit problem, you know? And that's once it becomes big enough to, you know, what we call a tumor. That's literally how it works. These cells compound, compound, compound. But God gave us a second system, though. We already said we had a failure in the first, which was genes, all right, and the cell itself. So then he gave us the immune system, right, your military. But again, moving forward, if there's a failure now in system 2, so how would the immune system act in all this? The immune system would then come up to crazy Sally Cell and tap her on the shoulder and say, you know, Miss Sally Cell, you have served your country well, okay, you were born and you were, let's say it was kidney cancer or whatever, right? So you have been born and you have served your country, filtering all the fluids and everything, but you are now, you know, 89, 90, 95 years old, and we saw that you did not commit suicide when you were supposed to. So we're now going to accompany you off to jail where we're going to kill you. Now please come with us. So that would be what the immune system would do as a backup. This is what God gave us as the second. But if there's a failure here too, again, because of a number of factors, it could be environmental, it could be genetic, it could be nutrition, it could be mental, emotional, and typically it is, well, then you have a failure there too. Now, again, this cell is allowed to just go on, growing, reproducing, proliferating, and then until it gets big enough to where they can see it on something or do any number of lab markers. So I just throw this in here to let you know again that there are many forms of biblical healing. And I like that caricature that they did before about, well, I'll just pray about it. Yes, of course we're Christians, so we naturally should be praying about everything. But again, there's different forms of healing in the Bible even. There's the spoken word with the centurion daughter. There's the pure faith with the bleeding woman. There's the touch, the blind man, the anointing with oil. There's the spirit. Remember that guy that strolled by the dead man's bones and then he was healed? But then there's actions. And in my experience, this is where most of us fall. I know we want to sit back and just pray. But here it's like the 10 lepers where you had to get up and go. Like the paralytic where he's like, I'm paralyzed. And Jesus is like, stand up. He could have been like, what do you mean stand up? I'm paralyzed. That's why I'm a paralytic. And then there's Naaman, you know. And so it takes action, right? So don't be lazy, all right? Your healing may not be a laying on of hands. It might be a Naaman, and in my experience, it's more that. If you do have a cancer diagnosis, or really any diagnosis, whether it's high blood pressure, whether it's diabetes, whatever it's called, this is you right now. This is your house on fire, and yes, you're in it, okay? So now, you and your family. And how do you want to address this? Do you want to use a garden hose on this fire? Or this is your house again, in case you forgot. So, no, you want to use a fire grade, plus do you want just 1 or 2 firemen there, or do you want like 10 fire trucks coming? Okay, well that is what is required when you have a cancer diagnosis. It is an intense illness, just like any of the others here that were mentioned, and it requires intense work, because what I see a lot of times is people that come in, whether it's to prevent or to heal, you'll see it's going to be the same thing. Whether you're trying to prevent, it's nature's 9 or God's health laws, what we've already discussed. So there's nothing new there, although it's a lot more targeted. But what I see people, again, is sort of taking this approach of, I'm just going to pray, and then I'm going to sit on the porch and drink herbal tea and think that this is going to be enough, me on the, singing Kumbaya. And I am being a little bit, facetious, but literally this is the mindset of so many people that have come in to my door when they want to do natural things, that I'm like, this is not enough, and that's not what's going to happen. All right, but again, I like to reiterate, any diagnosis, no matter what, but if you've gotten a cancer diagnosis, it does not immediately mean death. And the analogy that I like to use here, that I tell patients or other people too, is, my brother, I don't think none of you have met him, but he was in the military. He was a career soldier for 20 years. And when the war broke out in Iraq, he went there he was amongst the first deployed. And unfortunately, he was in the tank, and he was the guy's, I don't know if you can see it. Here's my pointer here. God, I forgot I got 2. I'm just bona fide. I get like 2 pieces of equipment. He was a person here that's at the top with their head out, right? Okay. So, and then when he would go, he would be there at least a year if they didn't extend it. And you can imagine that this is being in a war zone is an increased risk for death, right? You've got bombs literally whizzing, you've got fire, you've got all these RPG, everything. And then not only is there enemy fire to worry about, it's friendly fire too, like, we accidentally hit one of our own tanks, you know what I mean? Increased risk of death. But did he die there? No. And in fact, did most of our soldiers die there? No. So again, whatever diagnosis that you have, and knowing that God is the source of our healing, however he means to bring it, I told you all know I'm loquacious though. Okay, so here I'm going to finish up. The other stuff I'll just leave you to see. It's just to encourage you again to know that you're not automatically dead. So again, here they just feed us this line that there's no cure, all these diseases, and we just swallow it up as if we can't heal, but we can. Here's what God says, I will restore health unto thee, and I will heal thee of thy wounds, said the Lord, because they called thee an outcast, saying, this is Zion, whom no man seeketh after. And again, that's Jeremiah. And then later in Psalms, I'm the God who heals you. Okay, so cancer prevention and healing then. Again, it's the same, whether you're trying to prevent or whether you're trying to heal from it, as many people have done, from all stages, not just, stage 1, no metastasis, stage 4, metastatic in all bones. That was actually the first patient I saw, prostate cancer. All right, so here we go. But first, what is this? Quickly, guesses. What is it? A ring? I heard a ring. Since I'm out of town, we're going to go with a ring. And that is a good answer. But this is what it is right here. And we all know what this is. So again, I reiterate here that when you're trying to heal from any illness, no matter what the name is, it's not by just looking at a part. You have to help the body heal mind, body, and spirit. And cancer especially is going to have a mental, emotional, physical, and environmental components. Here's the principles in naturopathic medicine, though, but in general, again, we're going to skip all that. Here's nature's 9 health laws. Everybody else has already touched on them. So here they are. Now, typical diet of Americans is sad, like, standard American diet, fast food, fried food, junk food, high in calories, high in salt, high in sugar, low in nutrition. And with cancer specifically, as with diabetes as well, when people are trying to heal their bodies of diabetes, it is not just a matter of I'm going to eat healthily. That is not going to cut it. So basically, sugar, that gets cut out. And like Dr. Fox said, it's not just like eating a less amount. We basically cut, that is stripped out. It is not just the overt sources of sugar, like soda, cookies, candy, and stuff. Is anything that is going to convert into blood sugar, including fruits and stuff. And the reason I show this is just because when you eat sugar, it's like a policeman taking his gun off to give to a bad guy so that the bad guy can shoot the policeman with his own gun. Okay, so you are feeding cancer cells. They love sugar. They're eating it up. Okay, so that is completely comes out. So I put a void there, but really all of this is eliminated completely out of there. Yes, natural sugar doesn't matter. Just like if you're starving after 3 days, you're going to eat anything, whether it's a fruit or a vegetable you didn't like, you're going to eat it. And that's what we start doing. All these things, right? So we put them on special. We already talked about water. Yes, all these things apply. And again, you're working with a professional here. So I give you some resources here. I'm going to leave the PowerPoint. My IT people, wonderful, thank you. They were having problems. If you didn't, you can copy, like my PowerPoint onto your computer, because I'm out of time now. But when mental and emotionally, this is usually really important, really, really important, especially depending on what the cancer is. So I left you some colleagues here that work on that. Okay, rebuilding the spirit. That's just the mental stuff. Okay, now, here we go. Deep breathing, silent sleep. Okay, sorry, purpose, fun. All of these things have to be addressed. So here, I gave you like 9 resources. Again, you can look at that later. Foods, all of these things up here, they're cooked tomato, that's the lycopene. Anything that's on there, we have studies on that are, anti-cancer, anti-neoplastic. That's what we call it. All right, so you see there's a whole bunch of stuff. 2, these are all the liquids and beverages, again, that have anti-cancer properties. 3, the spices and components, all of these. My favorite on here really is cayenne pepper. But anyway, we use them all. And then herbs. All right, here are all the herbs, again, that we see in white papers, etc., that are anti-cancer. Okay? Herbs, 2, there's a lot of herbs. So you see all of these. Herbs, 3, there's that. All right, now here, some homeopathic medicines. These that we use specifically. This Phytolacca and Conium, typically Conium we use more with prostate cancer, and Phytolacca is breast cancer, but carcinosinum is all over. All right, 6, supplements. These are all the different supplements, again, that have anti-cancer properties. Supplement list 2, again, all of these. All right, resource list 7. Now, therapies, these are different things. So, for example, you'll see there coffee enema, and what it does is it's bringing out bile from the body, and bile is one way we remove toxins. So there's that. But anyway, there's other protocols, other therapies, the Rife machine, cesium. All right, so moving on. Okay, and I even gave you some resources. If you're looking for clinics that treat people integratively, meaning like you want to do both conventional medical treatments, or cancer treatments, and you want to do natural, or there's other clinics on here too that do 100% only natural therapies. So I gave you a list of some of them there. There are quite a few in the United States. There are a few in Mexico, and there's some in Eastern Europe. So great documentary that's coming up October the 9th. It's free. It's called The Truth About Cancer. And this is from Ty Bollinger, and he actually lost 3 very close family members, I think within 2 years' time, meaning a mother, a brother, and I don't know, an uncle or something. Very short amount of time, so it just sent him on this, literally this, what he calls it, The Truth About Cancer, global quest. He interviews all gamut of medical doctors, naturopathic doctors, chiropractors on what is the disease, how does it develop. He interviews patients that have had any known named cancer that have used either conventional medicine only, integrative, or 100% natural. Fabulous. It's running for free, as he typically does. So there's the website, www.gothetruthAboutCancer.com, and that starts October 9th, okay? So then there's websites here. I gave you those. Look at that. There's a book, all right? It's great. Outsmart Your Cancer, again, with a lot of these therapies and how everything. There's mine, natural, heal your body naturally, blah, blah. Hope you learned something. And if you did, don't be a hog and keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else. Time for you to get healthy. You can. God bless you. And sorry I went over time.
Okay, so I know it was a lot of information. With the press for time, as I promised, we will be entertaining a few questions, maybe burning questions. So what we will do, we have a hand already. Remember we talked about kidney disease, cancer, diabetes, hypertension. So if you do have questions, I need some mic movers. All right, so I need you to be standing, be looking around. If you do have questions, just have your hands up, or you can stand so the smaller ones will be able to identify you, move the mic to you, speak loudly, and allow the presenters to respond.
Dr. LeBon. Okay. The resource list that you mentioned.
Yes.
Where did you make copies to make that
Oh,
available?
what I did is I let your IT people up there, I was telling them they could take my PowerPoint off of my jump drive, and so you'll have the PowerPoint. So if you want that list, then yeah, just go up there and bring your own jump drive or whatever, and then you can use it. I don't mind. I give you free reign to put it on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was easy.
I got a few questions. Number one is the diabetes thing. When you said you can reverse it, if somebody's already on insulin, can they reverse it even though they're on insulin?
So if we're talking about a type 2 diabetic,
type
yes,
2.
the answer is yes, depending. So for example, if I have a patient whose BMI is 50 and they're diabetic, many times if that patient is able to lose the weight, and I mean cut the BMI maybe in half, they are able to get off the insulin and a lot of times off their oral medications as well. So we have had patients, many patients do that either through bariatric surgery or actually losing the weight naturally. I had one patient just in the last couple of weeks tell me that she started exercising. Her BMI was over 40, and she started exercising twice a day, morning and evening, because she was determined she did not want to be on insulin. So she started exercising twice daily for at least an hour each time, and she did lose a significant amount of weight. Her A1C, which is that number that tells you if you're under control or not, I think we set up there the A1C, if you're diabetic, needs to be less than 7. That helps prevent the complications of diabetes. So her A1C was able to be controlled because she lost the weight and because she was eating differently. So yes, the short answer is yes, if you are on insulin, it's possible to get off it if you're serious about doing other things.
Okay, for the heart doctor, I have another question for you. if somebody has plaque on the heart, why is it so hard for them to remove it? I mean, is there a way they can remove it? And if so, how? Can that happen here, or do they have to go to like another country to have it done?
Well, so I'm a nephrologist, by the way, but yes, plaques can regress, with lifestyle changes. I think the driving, the common thread here is lifestyle changes, exercise. Yes, you can see plaque regression.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question on the SAD diet, Standard American Diet, that someone mentioned. So my question is, what if you're eating your burgers or your fries, but you actually make them yourself at home? Is that better or healthier than buying?
Yes, I'm gonna stand up. Yes, absolutely. Pretty much anything that you make homemade is going to be 10 times whatever you're going to go out and buy, unless you're really eating at, sort of a really health-conscious establishment. First of all, because you have to remember that in any restaurant, they put so much sugar and salt, specifically, but then in addition to the other things, additives and colors and preservatives, which you will not always be privy to. A good example of this is if you go to Olive Garden, which when I'm working with people that have, elevated blood sugar, and I'm telling them, remember, because we have a certain math that we're doing to bring them back into natural blood sugar ranges. So when I say, for example, when you go to Olive Garden, and, I go there every once in a blue moon, you get that salad, right? They give you that salad that everybody gets, and they got the sauce on it. Okay, so people are thinking, I'm being healthy, I'm eating salad. Well, that sauce has a boatload of sugar in it. But you can't really tell because they put an extra boatload of salt in it, and then you've got a breadstick too. So yes, the short answer is you can control, you will never over sugar your own food, over salt your own food, over anything your own food. So yes, making it at home. And then if you are going to pick a meat, just as again an aside, if it's red meat, if it's beef or bison, those are the two healthiest ones, and you want to make sure that you are eating those meats where it says that it's grass-fed, either 100% the cow, meaning it was fed 100% grass throughout its entire life, or it should say grass-fed and grass-finished. Because if it doesn't, then that means they feed the cow what it should eat, which is grass, but then at the last 2 days or 3 days before they send them off to the slaughter, they've just pumped them with corn or other things. When did you last see a cow eating corn? Like, okay? So that's getting away from nature, right? And that will undo, just like if you let your child eat vegetables all 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then you eat nothing but Halloween candy for the rest of the night. You know what I mean? It undoes everything. So that's the answer. Yes, healthier at home.
And I have a part B to the question. So for many of us who try to eat healthier or tried vegetarian, vegan food, there are a lot of processed, especially vegan meat that is available now.
Yeah.
What are your perspective on that in terms of it being healthier?
Vegan, healthier? No.
Processed ones.
Vegan meat? No. It's high. I know it's very common, obviously, in SDA, and I really don't want to have my tires slashed because of this, please, or any flaming arrows launched at me. But I'm going to say we are not proponents in naturopathic medicine. And again, remember, naturopathic medicine is really just scientifically based. It is not based on religion in any way. So again, in vegetarian meats, they tend to be too high in sodium or salt. They tend to be full of the top 3 allergens that we find provoke food sensitivities, which is soy and wheat and gluten. And then on top of that, the salt. So in that tiny little, now I like some of them, don't get me wrong. My parents raised us vegan, okay? But just once I went to medical school, if you're going to compare them, that tiny little Morningstar patty, and hopefully there's no CEOs or anything from Morningstar, but those round ones, just one of them, and they come in a packet of 2, is already 1,500 milligrams of salt just in one, and that's really what you should have for the entire day. And nobody's going to eat just one of I can eat the whole packet myself in one sitting. So there's already that, right? So if you do the comparison, then yes, technically speaking, if you get that grass-fed and grass-finished beef from a cow that was happily strolling through the prairie and not in downtown Atlanta in a feed stall, pumped with antibiotics and hormones, right? He lived a happy cow life. You make that at home with your onions and garlic and thyme and rosemary, these herbs that God has given us, and you put a nice fresh crisp lettuce on it and a tomato, and again, all these other things. If you compare that to a veggie meat, then yes, that's superior. Plus, we haven't even gotten to the iron that's in there and all the other stuff that's in the, if people are anemic or something else. Yes.
I have one more question for you.
Me?
I just happened to think about it. I had health issues, and I have a hard problem digesting food as it is. What do you recommend that I can do to help digest my food? I've had 13 surgeries, and I'm having problems with
Oh,
my
no.
Yeah.
You poor thing.
And I'm having a lot of problems with that, and I don't know where to go or how to get. I mean, I've been on doctors and doctors and doctors and doctors, and I'm like,
Oh, I'm sorry. That's awful.
So, yeah, and I don't know what to do with it and where to go or anything, so.
Okay, digestion. So this is, of course, as you know, drive-by medical advice here, sort of, but meaning it's fast and furious. But just to answer it succinctly, when you have digestive issues, and again, in the United States of you can think of that as Washington, D.C., right? Because that's how you're feeding all of the rest of your country. So that's serious, and I'm glad you're asking for help. The first place that I like to start, obviously, is usually we look at your diet diary, we look at lab work, we look at everything, making sure there are no underlying issues anywhere else that's making your digestion go off. So notably like the thyroid gland or adrenals, because they send hormone. Now, I hear you saying everything's normal. We're not going to spend forever because it's kind of more clinical. But generally speaking, just keep in mind, everyone, too, that sometimes when they say everything is normal, you have to know what did they order. And I find that you guys typically don't know what was ordered, and it may or may not have been as thorough as it should be. So there's also that to keep in mind. But as long as there's nothing else going on, just again, drive by. Cleansing is always paramount to rebuilding health. Always, right? You've got trash. If you've got a disease, you've got trash building up in the United States of you. So my favorite website where I have all patients have to start with cleanse. Before we even get to supplements or anything we do, we start there. That's herbdoc.com. Herb as in herbal, and then doc, he's a naturopathic doctor and herbalist. He has his own health and healing story, in fact, where his parents both died within 1 year of heart disease. And then he went on his own quest and started doing herbs, etc. So he's got a bowel cleanse, then he has a liver cleanse. You do those. Then after that, just cleaning up a mucked up area does wonders for most people. After that, then there's a lot of natural therapies that you can do. Again, drive-by, castor oil cloth soaked, the washcloth soaked in castor oil topically to the abdomen. It's an analgesic, so it fights pain, as well as it helps bring increased circulation, so more semi-trucks, right, to that region. Anytime you bring blood to a region anywhere where it's diseased or whatever, that's bringing supplies, right? So it's just like the pizza delivery man coming to your house, and then FedEx bringing you a package from mom and whatever. When blood leaves, it takes away toxins and other things we don't need. There's hydrotherapy in the shower, again, moving blood around, moving toxins. Nature's 9 health thoughts. So again, it's kind of a lot there, and you're sounding like you've been through a lot, but those would just be some drive-by things to start.
Hi. Good evening. I have a question for the naturopathic doctor. It's about thyroid. I've never heard a doctor say that thyroid can't be cured. Every doctor always says that once you start taking thyroid medication, you have to stay on it for life. So I wanted to know your take on it, and I also wanted to know about probiotics for women who are breastfeeding. If
Okay.
it's safe to take a probiotic while you're breastfeeding.
Yeah, so her question about the thyroid first. So yes, thyroid, again, in the United States of you, think of it like the CIA. It really plays a strong hand in all types of different areas. So brain health, so brain city, heart city, reproduction health, etc. Digestion. So when it's off, yeah, that is really, really important to get it back on balance. Now, as far as if someone is taking a medication, whether it's, levothyroxine or maybe Synthroid, something else, it is possible, yes, but it's definitely tricky. And it depends also how long they've been taking a medication because just like, again, what we always try to encourage people to do is to allow the body to maintain its original function without giving it something externally. Once a person has already been on a medication for a long period of time, whether it's a thyroid medication or even like antacids, the body, God made it to be resourceful. But if you're giving it something externally, then the body will no longer produce it. And that's when it's difficult to be able to wean someone off of those medications. Just like back in the day, remember when we used to have those welfare and people didn't need to go to work because they could just have kids or maybe not have kids, but wait on a check, right? So that's the idea too. Then now it's difficult sometimes to get the thyroid to start producing thyroid hormone again because it's been given this hormone, especially if it's years and years and years. So yes, you can try, but that's very, very tricky and definitely should not be done on your own. That's definitely not one of those, God, I'll just pray and take myself off of thyroid hormone. No. I mean, you can certainly send yourself into, what we call thyroid toxicosis, thyroid storm. You just send yourself crashing. It can make you have an arrhythmia, which can, your heart, instead of beating normally, now it's beating like this. And that can make you have a heart attack. It can do all kinds of, put you in a coma. So thyroid for sure. Some medication, that's just another point. Some medications people will get off of and it's not as much an issue. That is definitely not one of them that you want to just, I'm going to pray and stop taking this. No. Now, so yes, it's possible, but tricky the longer the person has gone. Better to just, if they've already told you your thyroid is off, and start working on it to rehabilitate it. And again, there's a billion herbs and different ways, again, that we can do that. What was that second part of your question? Oh, probiotics. Yes. Probiotics are nothing more than bacteria that help you digest your food, and they also help in your immune system. So yes, they are safe to take in pregnancy because you're just putting back in what's already there anyway, but that sometimes is, damaged because of medications or because of a bad habit, nutritional habits or whatever. However, with that being said, as far as any supplement goes, there's quality, right? You don't want to just swallow anything down. Just like all toilet paper is not created equal. Some's too hard, some's too soft, whatever, So you want a quality supplement, whatever it is, because if you're taking poor quality, then you can actually, yes, that can harm you. So in my book too, I talk about my preferred vendors that we send investigators to make sure the quality of their supplements is sound. And then you use one from a preferred vendor. It's a company we know harvest the herbs well or harvest the thing, that they didn't, manufacture that probiotic in an oil field in China, for example, and you're pulling toxins for you and the baby. Yes.
So this question is for Sister Fox, and I was confused on the part with the blood pressure. I said blood level, blood pressure. And I saw that the normal was 120, and then it also said and 80, but then on the second one it said elevated. It also had 80 under the second one, and I was confused because I was like, so is it the same thing or not? Oh. Okay.
So there were different ranges. So the normal, remember I talked about two numbers, right?
Yeah.
The top number, the systolic blood pressure, and the bottom number, the diastolic. So the normal systolic blood pressure is less than 120, and the normal diastolic is less than 80. And so between 120 and 129, it's elevated, right? So you do not classically, you don't have the classic definition of hypertension, but this is an area where the blood pressure is not normal, you don't have to be on medication. With lifestyle changes, exercise, low salt diet, you can normalize your blood pressure to less than 120/80.
Okay, I'm asking a question here. I'm a driver. I drive 18-wheeler, right? For years, but we drive for hours, 5, 10 hours straight. And we hold our urine, right, for a long period of time, right? But I know, like, I'm working local now, so, you know, I run for like 2 hours. But I got friends that run for hours. And I've been telling them that, you know, it's best to pull over, you know, because it's messing up your kidney. We're driving and we're bouncing for hours. Tell us about that. Give me some details on that.
Well, if the bladder is really full, so the bladder sits low and there's some valves there that prevent urine from kind of backing up into the kidney. And theoretically, if the bladder is really full, urine can back up into the kidney. But it's, as a source of kidney failure, it's not the primary, it's not probably one of the top 3 reasons, for kidney failure. But as a matter of habit, I don't think it's something they should be doing. Just pull over and, take care of business. Yeah. But, yeah.
Dr. Fox, I don't know which one of you were talking about the numbness in your fingers and your foot. We drivers, we feel that. I just go to the doctor about the numbness. I'm lying down and then I feel my fingers numb, like no blood is in it. And I have to be, worrying about it. But I went to the doctor, they said that is the muscle. Could be muscle in your back cause the numbness in your foot. Tell me about that.
So basically with numbness, so you're talking about a sensation. So when I hear about numbness, I'm thinking about the nerves, whether it's your hand or your feet or wherever you're feeling numb. Now those nerves need to be supplied with oxygen by your blood vessels. So in general, your arteries are bringing oxygen to all the nerves. And so if you think about it, your nerves in your hands and also your feet are the most distant part from your heart. So they tend to be the first place where, if you're having some kind of a circulatory problem, it's the first place where you become symptomatic. So it could be an indication that there's something else going on, more so with your circulation. So anytime I hear numbness, I know, yes, it's something with the nerves, but then the circulation to the nerves is off. And there are lots of reasons that that can happen, a lot of risk factors. So anything that affects the flow of blood through your arteries can affect your circulation. So if you're having those symptoms, your doctor needs to check several things, your cholesterol, certainly your blood sugar, because any of those things can lead to circulation problems and then lead to problems with the nerves. Okay?
I have one question which relates to BMI. In terms of the numbers that you need to be, and I've heard it often said that, especially for some of us men who, when in the process of trying to lose weight, if we are lifting weights and so forth, the fat can convert to muscles and your numbers that you're looking for does not go down as you would like to see them. So therefore your BMI may be off and it may be showing as if you're overweight when you're in effect not. Can you speak to that a little bit for us, please?
Yes, certainly. So the BMI is certainly not a perfect indication as to how your body fat and things of that nature. There are actually other tests that measure, for example, your abdominal body fat and body fat in other areas that are a little more specific to that. So it's just a rough guide that we use to ensure that people are at what's considered a healthy weight. And I don't get hung up so much on the numbers. It's much more important what your lifestyle is. So if your BMI is 30 and you're telling me you're exercising in the gym several times a week and you're eating healthy and your BMI is 30, I'm not so worried, especially if I'm checking your blood sugar and your cholesterol and they're normal and your blood pressure is normal. So your lifestyle is more important than the numbers, if that makes sense. So if you're exercising and eating healthy, plant-based diet, what have you, you're managing stress, you're doing all the right things, I'm less concerned about your BMI. But what I typically see is somebody with an elevated BMI, say 40, and they're telling me they're exercising or whatnot, but I cannot just accept that and say, okay, keep doing what you're doing. I have to encourage that person to get their BMI down, because more than likely that 40 BMI is going to lead to something else.
My question is, I was told that a woman at my age don't have to have mammograms anymore. Is that true?
How old are you?
79.
That is correct. So what you want to bear in mind is the guidelines as to who should have a mammogram. Now, mammograms, let me just back up a bit, and I'm going to let the doctors speak as well. Mammograms are a screening exam for breast cancer. They are not perfect. They catch about 85% of the cancers. They miss about 15%. So there are general guidelines that say, okay, a woman with average risk. And what I mean by average risk is, so there's nobody in your family who has had breast cancer, you haven't had breast cancer yourself, so you're at average risk, then you should start having your mammograms, and even that is in debate, usually around 50 to 74. However, if you're African American, you may want to start earlier, and this is where we talk about risk. You may have seen earlier in lots of the presentations, just by your race, because you're African American, it increases your risk for several things. Because what you find is that if you were to get breast cancer as an African American, you tend to get a more aggressive form, or you hear about more African American women dying of breast cancer, even though more Caucasian women are diagnosed with breast cancer. So there are lots of factors that play into that. But to answer your question, the guidelines state, well, and let me back up a bit, because there's different guidelines out there. You would hear about the American Cancer Society guidelines. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology has guidelines. The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force has guidelines, and sometimes they don't all agree. But most would say from 50 to 74, you want to be getting your screening mammograms at least every 2 years. Now, here's the other thing that they say. If you are somebody over 74 and you expect to live to about 100, and you're in good health, you can talk with your doctor and continue getting your mammograms. Because the idea behind getting a mammogram is, if you find something, what are you going to do about it? And at 79, if you're prepared to do whatever it takes to treat that cancer, then go ahead and keep screening. Does that make sense?
So far, I haven't had one in over 3 years.
Okay.
And I can say I'm in good health. I have a little arthritis and a bad memory, but I have never had to see a doctor. I have never been sick.
Good.
And also a GYN doctor. I understand I don't have to see them either.
That's correct. So with regard to the pap smears, which check for cervical cancer, we start doing that at age 21, and we stop that one at age 65.
Wow.
Okay? So with the cervical cancer screening, if you are 21 or over, you should be having a pap smear at least every 3 years, if it's normal. If you're between 30 and 65, you have one every 5 years if they're doing the testing for HPV, which is human papillomavirus. This is the virus responsible for causing the cancer. So the guidelines state every 5 years if those are normal.
I'm happy about this because I never liked the GYN test, the pap smear. I hated it.
So you don't need to worry with that. That's fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We would like to say thank you to Dr. Mika Singh Anderson, Dr. Fox, and their team for hosting our AYS program this evening. And thank you to our panelists for coming and sharing that wealth of information. We really appreciate this. For all of you for coming to our AYS program, come again next week and support our youth. The youth of this church, your church. Not many of you are visitors. Most of you are members. So AYS should look like this every Sabbath. And if you bring one person, if each person brings another person, it should look very good. This is your church. These are your youth. Please come out and support our youth. Thank you all so very much. This was very good. And we look forward to the next one, Dr. Anderson. Just a few announcements before we form our circle, and our youth sponsor, Elder Curlin, will do our closing prayer. That's true. Is the person for Vespers here? Who is that? You, Elder Anderson? Our Vesper thought will be whatever Elder Curlin says in that prayer. So our announcements, AYS continues at 6. Next week, our AYS program will be held by the Family Life Department. Last weekend, we went out for our community outreach, singles ministry, women's and men's ministry, and youth ministry, and we were able to share over 160 meals, cooked meals, and you know I didn't do it, so it had to be the people sitting here. So they were cooked meals, very good food that I ate myself. Good food, along with personal hygiene items for men and women, and it was a tremendous blessing. So thank you all so very much. I think those might be the announcements. Tomorrow we will have, before Pathfinder and Adventurer, do we not have Let's Move, Dr. Anderson? Oh.
Because the time is so late and I would have taken 5 minutes for the Vesper thought. He only gave me 1 minute just to do the Witness for Fitness along with the Move, Let's Move program for tomorrow morning. I just want to share something with you quickly that will bring us right into the reason why the Witness for Fitness and the Let's Move is very, very important. And it may be just a reminder or some of the things that were mentioned, but I have here quickly, based on Psalms 131 verse 1, the word exercise here can have maybe 2 different meanings, but it all depends on how you look at it. Lord, my heart is not haughty, nor mine eyes lofty, neither do I exercise myself in great matters or in things too high for me. It all depends on the way you look at the word exercise. It's Psalms 131 verse 1. It's time to take action. What do we need? A lifestyle modification. It includes all the above. However, exercise prevents everything. Exercise at least 3 times per week for 150 minutes. Remember, activity and exercise differs. Don't forget to drink lots of water. No soda, period. Maintain a healthy weight. Let's try to destroy diabetes. How? Through diet and exercise. Tomorrow morning, 7:30, we'll meet at Johnson Park for exercise. Let's Move, Witness for Fitness. 2 hours. You can, if you want to walk for over 5 miles, it's up to you. If you want to walk for 1 mile, it's take your time. If we really want to get rid of diabetes and defeat diabetes, I am here to help you to exercise. Next week, Saturday night, Donnie, we're going to be having our exercise program in the gym. Please bring your towels or your mats. Please bring your towels or your mats and dress appropriately. We're starting our exercise program. Thank you very much. 8 o'clock. After Vespers?
Thank you, Elder Anderson. And just a reminder for our Pathfinders and Adventurers, you will have club tomorrow. Let us stand and form our circle as we usually do. Tonight we can form a big circle. Amen? As we sing side by side. can't start the song until we've closed the circle, so let's make it happen.
Pray that we'll all be there. Pray that we all will be there. Oh, what a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs he bare. Oh, what a privilege it is to carry everything to our Lord and Savior in prayer. Oh, Lord, we thank you for this. The Sabbath day, we have come together, we have fellowship, we have worshiped, and we thank you for the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us. And as we separate from the sanctuary and we go about our separate ways, O Lord, we pray that your angels that excel with strength will continue to guide and protect us. Give us the encouragement, O Lord, that we need as we go through this upcoming week. We know that the devil is like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. But we also know that greater is he that is with us than he that is within the world. So we thank you for the strength, we thank you for the courage, and we thank you, O Lord, for your spilled blood, that we can all be saved in your kingdom. This is our desire, O Lord, not one of us will be found lost. But all of us within the sound of my voice and the loved ones that we cherish and we love so dearly will be saved in your kingdom. So bless us now, O Lord, and may the love of God abide with us. May the sweet communion and fellowship of the Holy Spirit rest and abide with each of us as we go our separate ways and as we separate from each other, but never from your presence. Bless us and keep us. And bring us back, O Lord, at the appointed time where we will come together once more in fellowship one with another. We ask all these mercies in the loving name of Jesus, and all God's people say, Amen.